This episode is sponsored by Petra Kolb. Hello and welcome to Film Pro Productivity and Success, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creative people to live a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 57, Coping with Anxiety and Taking Back Control. Welcome back, folks, and I'm launching Season 4 right now as it happens. I wasn't intending to release it until the 12th of April, and it's currently something like the 24th of March, but I have good reason for advancing the schedule on all of this. This is one of several very short episodes that I am releasing in response to the ever-changing COVID-19 situation. I'd been working on Season 4, but I've temporarily shelved some of those episodes in favour of creating a few short ones like this to deal with matters that are a bit more immediate. Effectively, this is Season 4, as I said, but I'm dedicating the first 6 episodes of that season to the current crisis. One of the reasons for this is that I was getting a little bit anxious myself as I worked on future episodes, and I increasingly felt inside that I must offer you some sort of help and support during this current situation. I think the phrase is that I felt I had to pivot and adapt to bring you the advice you need right now at the cost of the more evergreen content that I had been working on that might be useful to you in the future. If I didn't kind of swivel and turn and deal with it, I would be doing you a bit of a disservice, and it really was making me feel, as I say, a little bit anxious, which is rather appropriate given the title of today's show, Coping with Anxiety and Taking Back Control. Now, the astute amongst you will have realised that episode 56 is not your standard run-of-the-mill episode of Film Pro Productivity and Success. If there is such a thing as a standard episode, that is actually a supporting episode for something I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on. And I offer up 2 sets of relaxation sounds. One is waves crashing against a beach, and the other is a thunderstorm in a tropical environment that you can use for relaxation at some point. And I'll refer to that a little bit later on in the episode. But just so you're aware, it's not a standard episode. So if it's not something you're interested in, you might want to skip it. The one previous to that, I talked about what you can do if you're stuck in self-isolation. I do think that we have a great opportunity here to get on top of stuff which, when the world returns to some sort of normality, will do us well. You wouldn't want to get to the end of all this and realise you'd sat and worried the whole time, would you? Well, go back and listen to that episode. That was recorded while this was all just starting to happen, but there's a bit of good advice in there that you should consider taking if you want to get out the other side of this with a positive outcome. So today I'm talking about anxiety because I've been talking to people online and on the phone, and I'm reading that this is possibly becoming a bit of a problem. It's totally understandable to experience anxiety, however, whilst coping with the stressful events and changes that we have in our current coronavirus situation. Anxiety actually exists because human beings have evolved ways to protect ourselves from dangers like that. The physical symptoms of fight or flight are what the human body has learned over thousands of years to operate efficiently and at the highest level. Anxiety is a cognitive interpretation of that physical response. John Eliot, unquote. When we feel under threat like we do now, our bodies react by releasing adrenaline and cortisol, amongst other things. These hormones make us feel more alert so that we can react faster, and they also make our hearts beat faster to quickly send blood to where it's needed most in the body. This hormone release creates a heightened readiness in our bodies, which is commonly called fight, flight, or freeze, or the fight, flight, or freeze response. If it looks weaker than me, I'll fight it. If it looks stronger than me but slower, I'll run away. And if it looks stronger and faster than me, I'll freeze and hope that it doesn't notice me. That's fight, flight, or freeze. It's built into us. It's just that right now we aren't facing down a saber-toothed tiger as our ancestors did, but the unknown of something new and unusual that we can't control. This causes us fear and worry, and our body reacts automatically. And we've got no control over this reaction, but it's important to recognise at the same time that anxiety and worry are natural and sometimes useful human emotions that form part of our evolutionary makeup. It's when they become persistent and overwhelm us with feelings of fear, panic, worry and unease, however, that we need to recognise the problem and try to deal with it. It's not healthy to live in a prolonged state of anxiety, as it can lead to longer-term problems such as panic attacks. There's a quote attributed to Mark Twain. I don't know if it's from one of his books or if it's something he said himself, I've got to be honest. I tried to find out, couldn't find out, gave up eventually. But he said, "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened." And that pretty much sums up what anxiety is and why you need to deprogram yourself to work around it if it is beginning to overwhelm you. By constantly worrying about things that you just can't control, you hand over your control, the control of your life that is, to fear. Another quote, this time by Pulitzer Prize winner Saul Bellow, who also won the Nobel Prize for Literature, teaches us a further lesson on this subject. He says, "Anxiety destroys scale and suffering makes us lose perspective." Let me say that again. Anxiety destroys scale and suffering makes us lose perspective. This is further described by John Carbonell of anxietycoach.com as the anxiety trick, or you experience discomfort and get fooled into treating it like danger. That's the anxiety trick. You experience discomfort and get fooled into treating it like danger. The reality is that no amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen. Worrying about tomorrow only robs today of its joy. So with all that said, if you're suffering from anxiety right now, there are a number of things you can do to reduce it. Firstly, you can exercise, and again, I realise we're not in the ideal of situations. If you're under instruction by your government to self-isolate, as we are here in the UK, that might be slightly more difficult, but it's not impossible. In fact, our current rules in the UK allow us to have 1 walk per day, and I strongly recommend that you take it. That exercise and the fresh air that comes with it will greatly raise your spirits and scare away feelings of sadness, which could begin to haunt you in this time of isolation. The second suggestion that I have is that you learn some relaxation techniques to help you with the mental and physical feelings of fear that you might be feeling. And that's why in episode 56 I've loaded up some relaxation sound effects. As I say, there's waves crashing on a shore and a thunderstorm. And my voice only goes for about 1 minute 20 or so at the start of that, and it doesn't return at the end. So you can get into it without fear of my voice coming in and ruining it all at the end. And there's plenty of information online about this. I'll try and post some more information in the show notes. But these relaxation sounds can be used in conjunction with just imagining yourself in a relaxing place and focusing on your breathing and stuff like that. And there's plenty of online advice about it, as I say. The other thing you might want to try is just sitting and reading books as well, or try learning things like yoga or meditation. There's plenty of information online about that as well. And just on the breathing thing that I mentioned there, the third thing that I wanted to talk about is that it can also help to just focus on your body for a minute. We used to, at drama college, imagine a string pulling us up through our spine, through the top of our heads, so we sat correctly upright, and we would focus on our breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Focusing on your breathing can be very relaxing and is, in effect, a meditation technique on its own. Fourth up, I have here healthy eating, and that's trying to eat lots of fruit and vegetables if you can get them. And I realise we're in a limited travel situation, some of us at the moment, but if you can get them, and also try to avoid too much sugar, as the resulting dips in your blood sugar level can give you anxious feelings on the back of that. Also, try to avoid drinking too much tea and coffee, as caffeine can increase your anxiety levels. And yeah, I mentioned tea there, and also in Scotland there's a lot of fizzy drinks that get drunk as well, and there's caffeine hidden in an awful lot of things, so you maybe want to read the labels of some things. One thing to be aware of is fast-acting painkillers. They usually are fast-acting because they're piggybacking the drugs on the back of caffeine to get them quickly into your bloodstream, so monitor your caffeine levels and just be aware of that. Next up, I'd say avoid alcohol or drink in moderation. It's very common for people to drink when they're feeling nervous, but the after effects of alcohol can make you feel even more afraid or anxious than you did before. Number 6 on my list is just talking to friends on the phone. If you're isolating, it can be very effective for people with anxiety problems. Just be very careful when you do this not to call up and get stuck in an endless loop of complaining or unhappy gossip about the situation, or that will make you a lot worse. Number 7, stay away from the news. Can't really stress this one highly enough. You don't need to constantly feed your fears by listening to the media. Ignore them. Shut them out if you have to, or choose 1 or 2 channels that you can listen to. And in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about kind of the white noise that we face in the world today with information overload or information pollution. So maybe just choose some official channel to receive your information about the coronavirus. The whole media thing is just not worth it. All they're going to do is feed on your fears and suck the life out of you, to be honest. Number 8 on this list comes from one of the articles that I read when I was reading about this episode, and it said that the main reason people continue to worry too much, despite their best efforts to stop, is that they use what they refer to as an intuitive response. That's like telling yourself to stop thinking about it for a counter-intuitive problem. Finding counter-intuitive responses and practicing them is a far better way, they say, to help you to worry less. A counter-intuitive response for people who worry too much is one that doesn't try to stop or oppose the thoughts. Instead, it aims at changing the way that you relate to those thoughts. So, for example, if you say to yourself, forget about it when you're anxious, try instead saying, think about it. Think about this. Is this worth me thinking about it? Is this worth the angst that I'm giving it? And you might realise that you're worrying about nothing. And I'll link to that article that I talk about there in the show notes for this show. Now, if you really want to get back control, then I think you have to make a decision to do so and look at it with that higher level of thinking that I urge you all to create in your day-to-day lives. It's the thing I talk about in episode 1 of the show. That's the state of mind where you can work on your life and career at the same time that you find yourself living and working in it. And with this in mind, try to learn and understand more about your fear or anxiety and put it into perspective. Is what you're facing right now just discomfort, which you have been fooled into thinking or treating like danger? Or is it a fear of the unknown? There's a real danger in these times of uncertainty for us to catastrophize, and that does nobody any good at all. All humans have what they call a negativity bias, and that basically says that we always think the worst. If you can recognize that that is a human trait and accept that you might have been caught up in its kind of thrall, then you can get by it. One of the most effective things that I've used to get past anxiety in the past is to put aside 15 minutes each day for, in inverted commas, worry time. You can choose to allow yourself to worry within that time, but once it ends, lock it off and allow yourself to relax and get on with things. And during that 15 minutes, I would highly recommend that you do a brain dump and get all that stuff that's filling up your brain and worrying you, get it all out of there and onto a piece of paper. Get all those worries and all those fears out of your head so that you can look at them. Because once you see them written down in front of you, you will quickly realise that they're unfounded. Many of them are unfounded at least, and only some are worth your consideration. This process will make it much easier for you to move past your problems, and when you're out with the 15-minute worry session, put it behind you and reapproach it the next day. This technique allows you to get stuff done, and the more you take action, the more in control that you will feel and the less anxiety that you will experience. Religious author Max Lucado said that anxiety and fear are cousins but not twins. Fear sees a threat. Anxiety imagines one. And that imagined threat that you might be feeling right now, even though right now it feels like it's right on top of you and based in fact is still only in your mind. Don't allow yourself to catastrophize. None of us can predict the future, so don't try. A friend of mine recently had a cancer scare and he'd convinced himself that he had it, and a number of us assumed he had it as well from the way it was all looking. But he didn't have it, and what he did have was treatable. That's the negativity bias that I mentioned earlier, and it does none of us any good. So chuck out that crystal ball and think about this a bit more clearly. I've used this quote before, if I'm entirely honest, but Amy Morin, author of 13 Things That Mentally Strong People Don't Do, says, wasting brain power ruminating about things you can't control drains mental energy quickly. The more you think about problems you can't solve, the less energy you'll have left over for more productive endeavours. In the next episode, which will be out in a day or so, maybe 2 days, I'm going to be looking at information overload and how to cope with it. Just the amount of information we've been getting recently, new information that we're having to deal with and process on top of our information coming in our day-to-day lives and our work lives, is getting a little bit too much for me, and I figured it might be getting a little bit too much for you as well. So I've done an episode, I've prepared most of it already, and I'm going to record that and, as I say, release it, I don't know, 2 days from now? Shall we see how this goes? I'm not going to go 1 week between episodes for these slightly shorter ones. These are going out as emergency episodes really to help you all out. So hopefully you'll be able to tune in and check that one out. I've not got a specific call to action written down for today's show, but obviously if you're suffering from anxiety, hopefully there's some helpful advice here that you can apply to your life and work as it's going on at the moment. The only other thing that I'd add here is that in order for me to create this much new content and advance the season by 2.5 weeks or so, I've had to put the kibosh in my plans to have a marketing strategy for the release of Season 4, and any help that you can offer me to promote the show, to promote these new episodes that are putting out. These are emergency episodes aimed to help people that are in trouble. Any help you can give at all, whether it be talking about it on social media, doing a screen grab of your phone as you're listening to the show on your listening app, and then putting it online and tagging me into it and just letting other people know that you're listening to it, that would be a great thing. Leaving me a review on any of the apps. I quite often say just on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, however you listen to it now. Obviously, I'm not a Mac guy. I don't know what you're listening to on, but I believe it's Apple Podcasts. That would be helpful. And if there does happen to be an actual, genuine marketing expert that's not going to rip every penny that I've got off me and give me nothing back, but if there's somebody listening to the show that's a genuine expert, I would be interested in talking to you about how I can best promote this show. This is a solo show. It is not a business. It doesn't make money, although I've got a few pennies coming in, which are going to go back out again in promotion. I can't afford to have a big marketing company. Don't think I'm an easy touch either. I'm just looking for some help from someone that's a genuine expert, not somebody that does it on the side, if that makes any sense. But I would be very interested in getting some help to build a marketing strategy to push this show out. Now, enough about that. I may have to delete that. That sounded a bit negative. It wasn't meant to be. Anyway, don't waste any more time and energy worrying about tomorrow, folks. Just step up and face the challenge that lies before us today instead. Stay on top of what you can control, and you will build up the confidence to get through these difficult times. In episode 55, I suggested 5 positive things that you could be doing right now to take advantage of your forced isolation. So please go back and have a listen to that if you've not heard it already. The more positive action that you can take right now, the more calm you will feel inside, and that calmness will spread to the others that are around about you. Trust me, if you have the courage to take action in your life and in your business, whilst this crisis unfolds, you will be in a far better place at the end of it all when we return to some degree of normality. Now, don't worry, folks. Everything is going to be all right. Just take control of your own destiny, keep on shooting, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity and Success. The music that you're listening to right now is Adventures by Ehimitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website, filmproproductivity.com, and you'll also get any links from the show there as well. You can also follow my personal account on Twitter and Instagram. It's at @fight_director on both, or follow the show on Twitter on the official account at FilmProProdPod, or on Facebook at FilmProProductivity. Please support the show, folks, by subscribing, spreading the words, and please do leave an awesome review.